I think I would say it's not the music that makes me an engineer, but it's the engineer that makes me a better musician and appreciate the music even more.
Hi, this is Artful Engineer Episode 7. My name is Junko Yoshida. Today I'm with Chin Beckman, CEO of DSP Concepts. Before I do this kind of interview, I usually check people out on LinkedIn. And when I saw your LinkedIn entry, you actually listed 19 years of experience as actually a concert pianist for the California Pops Orchestra. But at the same time, in parallel, you list 18 years of experience of CEO of DSP Concept. In my book, that makes you a perfect artful engineer. Do you see yourself more of as a CEO or more as a pianist?
I see myself more as a pianist.
Wow.
The CEO is a job, and the job may change over time, but once a pianist, you're always a pianist.
What does DSP Concepts do? And how did you actually found the company?
DSP Concepts is about making audio innovation easy for product makers. The reason I became a CEO is because we actually founded the company together. My husband, Paul Beckman, he's the technical founder. And so when time came to raise money for our vision to kind of push out the technology to the industry, well, our investors said, well, we can't let Paul be distracted. So Chen, you're going to have to be the one to be the CEO. And so my job is to communicate with my investors. I represent the company. I talk to my customers and I talk to our partners.
So tell me a little bit more in terms of the tools that you provide at DSP Concepts.
One common problem for audio product development is it requires all these skill sets. And Paul is one of the rare people who know a full stack of technology, but you have to know the algorithms, you have to know how to optimize it for the processors you're running on. You can't have latency, you have to run it efficiently. And you also have to know all the software integration that needs to go in together, sort of the connecting the pipes. And then we realized that, well, we want to make this available to the industry so that audio innovation can be done in a quicker way. And that's why you have the tools that allow you to tune in real time. You do not have to code because all the modules have been coded with efficient code that runs for each processor. So it's hand coded to be optimized. And then at a high level, the audio, I guess, algorithms implementer can be thinking at a systems level and saying, what do I want my product to act like? And then they just drag and drop the blocks and connect the signals. And so it accelerates the whole process.
Let's take it from the very beginning, because I understand you have a very global upbringing. Tell me your journey.
I was born in Taiwan, and I lived in Taiwan until about 8 years old. And then my parents decided to move the family to Argentina, not for any particular reason, no, not jobs or anything. It was at the time, I think, U.S. started to have better relations with mainland China, and so a lot of people thought, whoa, the communism is going to take over. So a lot of people just left, and as an 8-year-old, I didn't know. I just went along with where my parents took me. In Argentina, I spent the good bit of my time there going to school until high school, ninth grade. And then after ninth grade, when we finally got the green card to come to the U.S., then that's when we moved to the U.S.
So tell me, where did you pick up the piano?
So I was always in love with piano since I was a little kid. And I think I begged my parents to let me go take lessons. And so they took me to have lessons when I was 7 years old.
So this was in Taiwan?
That was in Taiwan. And soon after that, we went to Argentina. And the one thing that they bought me was a piano. We had no TV, and back then there was no computers, no nothing. So the only thing I had was the piano. So I used to play the piano pretty much all the time. And luckily for me, I met a teacher. Every lesson she would stay with me for 3 hours. And we would do sight singing. We would do solfeggio, which is like kind of music. You have to learn the rhythms and how to beat the rhythms the right way. And it was like a full conservatory type education that I think my mom wasn't paying for because she was just paying for the lesson. But my teacher loved me so much that she would stay. And each time we just had the most fun together.
Neither your father, neither your mother was a musician.
No, I don't come from a musician's family, so a lot of it is really coming from that one teacher. I feel like she changed my life. And after I came to the U.S., apparently I was too advanced in math. So during math class, they told me to go do something else. They sent me to the computer room because that's where all the smart kids go, I guess. But I didn't know what to do with this computer with remember the punch cards?
Punch cards, yeah.
So I said, well, is it okay if I go play the piano? And they said, yeah, go ahead. So I did. I just like start playing the piano. And then I found another teacher in that junior high school. She was that talented and gifted programs teacher. She started taking me to, the Rotary Club where I played, for their luncheon. And it was through that, again, that somebody said, and noticed me, and then they sponsored me to going to the Juilliard program.
So, but then you ended up going to Boston University and major in both music and engineering. Where did the engineering things come into the picture?
Engineering was more because I have the aptitude for the math, and so it was a good thing to study, and it was interesting. And of course, the piano part is the easy part because anytime, anywhere there's a piano to be touched, I want to be part of that.
While you were at the Boston University, I think you told me that you actually happened to learn to accompany other musicians like violinists. How did it come about?
An accompanist is a totally different skill set. And I have many good friends who play really, wonderful piano as a soloist. But then when we try to play together, it doesn't quite go because accompanists have to be very sensitive to the partner. And how that came about was a friend of mine has a brother who was coming to the U.S. to Boston University, Boston Conservatory, which is a different school, to study violin performance. And apparently he was always like number 1 or number 2 in competitions in Taiwan. So when he came to study, I just wanted to listen to his violin. I mean, he could make those strings sing. And soon he started to teach me how to accompany him. He said, Chen, if I raise my bow this way, okay, if I breathe, you have to take that cue from me. I'm not counting beats for you to say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, go. He's like, no, you take my breathing.
Which celebrity musicians or somebody we can all recognize have you actually accompanied as a pianist?
The one that I enjoyed the most was Carol Channing. She came to the Bay Area. She was doing fundraising for the schools. And so whenever she came to town, she asked like who can accompany. And because I was involved with the Pops Orchestra, they always tap on me. And she's very famous. She's the original Dolly. And since then, she's been in a lot of movies. And she just comes in and she's like, Chin, darling, how are you? It's one of those. So I have a lot of fun. For me, music is about fun. It's not about only playing, with a good skill set, but it's having fun with people. It connects people. And then the other interesting story is I accompany the world's best classical harmonica player. So they have these harmonica conferences, and then one time it was in Sacramento, and so they invited this person. His name is Jia Yi He, and apparently he's fairly famous in the radios in China. And they say, well, who can accompany? I think it was like Yellow River Piano Concerto. So if you have a chance, go on YouTube and look that up. It's a very complicated piano concerto, and I was thinking, how can you play that on the harmonica? So when I met with him, that was the best. Then I learned you sandwich several harmonicas, and he can do this, and then he can play all these notes.
Tell me what it takes to read people. That's number one. Number two, actually, more interesting question for me is that how does that reading people have anything to do with you being a CEO?
The good thing is reading people and CEO job is probably like essential. And in music, the interesting thing is I accompany different people, and I accompany a lot of times the same pieces but played by different people. And you would think, well, it's the same piece, but it's not. When people play it, they interpret it differently. They just play it differently. And in order to be able to match well, you have to take their cues. And I think it's pretty much the same in business.
Where do you see the connections between engineering, you being engineering, and playing the piano?
So engineering teaches you how to think of things in a logical way. How do you debug? How do you view things as a system? So you break things down into processes and system. And then I realized actually music has this logic to it. There's a pattern to it. And then when I now become CEO, running a business, growing the organization, now it's even more so of functions and bigger systems. And now when I look at music, it's the same way. It's like, in the orchestra, there are groupings of instruments, and they kind of logically go together, and this is how they function together, and who plays what at what point, and that makes beautiful music together. And actually, so I think I would say it's not the music that makes me an engineer, but it's the engineer that makes me a better musician and appreciate the music even more.
Tell me who are your favorite composers as well as pianists?
So the pianist I mentioned is Martha Argerich, and I also like the old time people, Arthur Rubinstein, people that when they play, they just play through. If you listen to their recordings, they're not perfect, but they really bring out the musicology, the feeling. Those are my favorite pianists. And for composers, I like Bach, Brahms, Beethoven. I guess those are the three big Bs. I also like the newer composers. I like there's a famous one called Piazzolla, and he was actually a controversial composer because he would take the traditional tango music from Argentina, but then he put his own arrangement into it.
Which music did you pick for playing today?
It's a Chopin waltz. It's supposed to be a 1 minute waltz, and I don't know why it's called 1 minute. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be played under 1 minute, but that's the famous 1 minute waltz.
Well, thank you very much for coming to the show. This was a lot of fun. I mean, the fact that you see yourself as pianist, job can come and go, but the music stays with you. That was beautiful.